We are going to get started here in a few minutes. We will go ahead and get started once we're just waiting for a few more folks to jump into this meeting, but we'll get started here in a second. If you guys want to throw in the chat, if you guys want to throw in the chat where you're listening in from, we'd love to know where you're at. Vancouver, Canada. Fantastic. Washington, D.C., Minneapolis. Tuning in from Spain. Love that. Seattle, Washington, Calgary, Alberta, Austin, Texas. Listening in from Hong Kong. Love that. British Columbia. Love that. Atlanta, Georgia, Cincinnati. Perfect. All right, we're going to get started here. Some more folks might trickle in, but we'll get started so we are aware of everyone's time. Thank you guys all for joining us for this webinar session. We're super excited to hear from Lisa Schulteis. She is the founder and owner of Electra Lime Marketing and Your Event Marketplace. She is here blending her background of neuropsychology with her expertise in the event strategy and production. Lisa creates impactful and engaging, inclusive live, hybrid, and virtual events. She has an extensive experience in both live and virtual formats. She's been trusted partner of Fortune 500 companies, associations, and organizations. So she specializes in the intersection of neuroscience and event design, sustainability, and event marketing. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa so she can, drop some knowledge on us and kind of give us her take on neuroscience backed by event design.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. And hello, everybody. I love seeing where everybody is coming in and joining us from. It's, even to this day, sometimes it still amazes me that, technology provides the ability for us to connect from all over the world. And we've got some big events coming up across a number of associations. So hopefully I'll see many of you in person very, very soon. But this is going to be interactive this morning. I know we're in a webinar format, but please feel free to drop any questions that you may have, any comments that you may have that in the chat. And I'm actually curious, in addition to where everybody is dialing in from, I'm curious who's on the call. So if you're a planner, if you're a supplier, if you're a venue, any other category that we want to drop in there, go ahead and put that in chat because I am curious to see who's on the call today. And I appreciate you all dialing in on all these different time zones. I'm super excited because we're going to be taking a bit of a deep dive today. So I'm starting to see, I've got a couple of planners coming in here, planner and supplier. That's always fun, right? When we register for events and we don't know how to actually answer that question. Catering sales manager, event producer for a DMO, excellent. So no matter how you interact with events, whether you're a planner, whether you're a venue, a DMO, doing fam trips, doing festivals, whatever it may be, there's going to be some different ideas for you here today. And regardless of your role in events, you still need to incorporate neuroscience and behavioral psychology into your events. So that's what we're going to be going through. So let's talk about the brain. The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to make two fists. We're not going to duke it out, I promise. I want you to make two fists and I want you to put them together. And I can't actually bend my elbows backwards, but if you look down at your hands, right? So you're looking down at your thumbs, that's the average size of the brain. And it's amazing to think that something that's this size runs something this size, right? So it runs everything that we do, from our movements to our thoughts to our decision making, all of those different things that happen in the nanosecond of our lives is being, controlled by what's going on in the brain. And the brain is made up of neurons, and there's a lot of them. So I want you guys to put a guess in the chat. How many neurons do you think the brain is made up of? And Andrea, I see you on this call. She can't answer because she actually has heard me talk about this. So, oh, okay, she did answer. Good. Keep going. So I'm seeing 500 million, a million, 3 trillion. Andrea's like, I don't remember. 100 billion. Any other guesses? 5 million, 250 million. Excellent. The brain is actually made up of approximately 86 billion neurons, billion with a B. So you think billion of neurons in here, right? So it's a crazy number of neurons that are actively firing all the time. And there's some other things happening in the brain that affect us at events as well. And I promise there's not an anatomy test later. I just wanted to give you a real quick kind of peek at this. There's different areas of the brain, as you know. We have the prefrontal cortex, we have the amygdala, which is my favorite one because it's fun to say, the basal ganglia. So all these different areas in the brain are actually involved in memory. They're involved in engagement. They're involved in emotion. So all of these things that happen at an event, whether it's working memory and decision making, the nucleus, I can never say this word, accumbent, I'm just going to skip it. That helps with the brain's reward system. We always have one word we can't say. The basal ganglia, right? It's associated with habit formation. So there's all these different areas of our brain that are working when we're at an event. And then also we've got these 86 billion neurons that are always firing as well. So there's a lot going on in our brain at any one time. Now, why does this really matter? Why are we having this conversation? It's because your brain deserves better events. And honestly, so do your attendees. So how are we going to engage the brain during events? And I'm going to say here too, you're going to hear me use events as kind of a global term. I realize that we have meeting planners who will tell me that they don't plan events, they plan meetings, right? We have some people on the supplier side. We have people that plan fam trips. We have people that plan all these different things. So I'm going to use events as kind of a global term, but just realize that it's going to apply to anything that you're doing in that meeting, event, hospitality space. Okay. So how can we engage the brain during events? Well, we're going to look at 6 different cognitive cornerstones today. The first one being attention, the next one being memory formation, then multisensory activation, psychological safety, very important, social and emotional bonds, and then cognitive load. And what you're going to find is as we're talking about these today, there's a lot of areas where they kind of overlap or intersect and they integrate with each other, but each one's really important. So I wanted to take some time in each area. So we'll start with attention. How in the world can we keep attention, right? Whether we're talking a live event, today we're on this webinar, it's even more difficult for me to be able to keep your attention. You can pick up your phone, you can be checking email, right? So we need to use novelty to capture your attendees' focus. And how does that look? Well, what happens is with the brain, anytime something new happens, right? Something novel, something new appears, the brain lights up. It's almost like a spotlight, right? It lights up when something new appears. So what that could be a sudden sound, right? Maybe it's even a slide change. What happens is the neurons in your brain, they fire this burst of a chemical called norepinephrine across your brain. And that chemical surge increases the signals in the sensory areas, making every sight, every sound, every sensation briefly more vivid. So that's why all of a sudden, if you are in a room and you can tell that people are kind of dozing off maybe a little bit on you, if you make a loud noise, right, everybody kind of jumps, right? And all of a sudden they're a little bit more alert. So we don't necessarily want to scare our attendees, but we do want to do something novel, something new. And so what we can consider then is why attention is fading, right? And when is attention fading? So our brain circuits actually tire after about 10 to 15 minutes of nonstop input. And obviously, this is going to depend on the person. Some people can do more, some people can do much less. But that sustained attention, it depends on this back and forth loop between the regions of our brain. And you'll see this happen, right? You'll see people with their wandering eyes. You'll see people picking up their cell phones. You'll see maybe like just fading energy, right? They're kind of slumping, maybe getting lower in their chair. Their shoulders are down. Hopefully, they're not actually falling asleep during your event. But you think about it, even like at my house, right? I can be talking to my husband, and all of a sudden, I kind of see the eyes glaze over, and I know he's gone, right? He's no longer paying attention to me. I'm hoping this happens with your spouse or partner too. It's not just me. But we see this attention fading. So we need to have some kind of interruption, some kind of interaction, whether it's an unanticipated question or a poll or some kind of physical prompt to get their attention back, right? Because otherwise our message is going to get lost. So we want to use pattern interrupts. And pattern interrupts are ways to recapture your attendees' attention. It's novelty triggering that brain's reward system, right? And it re-engages their curiosity. So some kind of unexpected change. So I wanted to give you some very specific examples that maybe you can use. So let's say if you're doing a conference keynote, about minute 7, you could drop in a 30-second quick poll, right, to kind of reset focus. If you're doing some kind of facility tour, site tour, you could halfway through unveil like an unplanned secret exhibit room, right? That's announced by the tour guide just to kind of jolt curiosity, some kind of surprise. If you're doing an e-sport tournament, between matches, you can cue a 60-second crowd cheer challenge on the big screen. I was at a tournament with my son a couple of years ago, and they were having tech issues, and they started a wave. And I'm not kidding, the wave went for 15 minutes. I'm pretty sure we had some kind of record going with that. But you can, cue in these different little surprises or different nuggets as you're going through. So those are just a few ideas. Start jotting down notes of what you can do for your specific event. All right, let's move on to memories, memory formation. I'm curious if anybody, you don't have to actually put this in chat. I'm just curious if anybody's office looks like this. I feel like about 2 weeks before an event, my office sometimes looks like this with all of the sticky notes. But we want to use cues to anchor our attendees' memories, right? And why memories matter? Well, this photo is so good because without strong retrieval cues, most insights vanish pretty quickly. And the research on this will vary a little bit on how long and how much, but on average, the classic forgetting curve is we lose about 70% of what we've learned in the first 24 hours if we don't have any kind of retrieval cue to bring it back to mind. So we are like this lady on the screen, right? Everything's just kind of seeping out of the back of our head and disappearing. And we want to be able to keep those memories in there. So how do we do that? We do it with retrieval cues. So this could be something as simple as a small keepsake, right? If you're an exhibitor, it's one of the reasons exhibitors use swag. Some swag is better than other swag, but it's one of the reasons we use swag. A follow-up email or a text after an event, something tactile that you're giving to them, some kind of a cue. And my best example of this is if you're cleaning up your office, for example, and you're digging through your drawers and you pull out a concert ticket stub. Or maybe you see a picture of it on your phone because we don't really have the paper ticket stubs anymore. But if you see that ticket stub, right, all your memories of that concert come flooding back, right? My last concert I went to was Bruno Mars in Vegas. It was amazing, highly recommend it, with my best friend. And when I see that ticket on my phone, I remember everything from the good experiences to the maybe less good experiences, right? We had some issues with our ticket getting into the actual concert. relatively quickly resolved. But the good experiences, right? I remember singing along. I remember standing up and dancing. I remember trying to dance because we were pretty much shoulder to shoulder because they had so many chairs smushed into that auditorium. But it was a great concert. I can tell you what I was wearing. All of those retrieval cues are there. So if we can do something at our events to provide those retrieval cues, then that memory formation, not only are we creating the memories for people, but we are giving them ways to retrieve those memories. So here's a couple of design tips. You've seen these. So a guide tour, we've seen this on exhibit floors as well. Give each guest a card to stamp at key stops, right? 5 different landmarks. In the US, the national parks do this amazingly well for their kid programs. The kids can go around and learn different things at different stations. And when they have all their stamps, they come back and they get a ranger badge, right? A national park ranger badge for that national park. So it's a great way to create those memories and for them to retrieve them. If you're doing a product launch at an expo booth, have a scan to unlock, right? Showcasing your product's top 3 features. And then a sales kickoff. You could do a 5-question micro quiz 24 hours post-event, right? And the top scorers earn a spotlight in the next all hands newsletter, right? These are just some different examples that you can do. So try to find different things that you can do to form those memories, but then also to retrieve them. All right, let's move over to multisensory activation. This is one of my favorite ones. And actually, this photo is great because there's a lot of things happening in this room if you take a look at it. So we want to use our senses to amplify our attendees' experience. Most events, we use 2 senses predominantly. We're using our eyes and we're using our hearing. So in the chat, tell me some of the things that you see in this room that are going to affect your senses. Obviously, we're looking around, right? I'll give you a hint on one of them. We have our lighting. So we have different subdued lighting in here. That's going to be what we're seeing. But looking at this picture, what kind of things are you potentially hearing? Great. The plants, you can smell those. What else could we? Oh, sound of water. Yes, in those big giant rocks on the floor, that's bubbling water. We also, I'm going to guess in this room, spa smells. I was just about to say that. Excellent. Comfy seating. Yes. So I'm going to guess that there's also maybe some music playing in the background, some low grade music to relax us. There's a lot of different things that we can use all 5 of our senses in this one room. So we want to bring in our senses because what neuroscience tells us is that when we combine 2 or more senses, memories stick. And yes, it does look like a soft texture chair. And, like I said, we're always using our sight and sound in most cases, but if we can even bring in a 3rd one, my magic number is 3. I love to bring in 3. That's going to help our memories stick. So, maybe you're looking at a picture while you're touching some kind of textile or maybe smelling a scent, right? So your brain is linking those experiences together, and that creates a very vivid memory that you're using more than just one sense. So here's another example. I love this photo. If I'm ever at an event and somebody wants to hand me a drink that looks like this, it doesn't even have to have alcohol in it. I just love this photo because there's so many things that are going on in this photo as well, right? We're pairing our senses to deepen that emotional impact. So when I look at this photo, one, I live in Arizona. It is hot here 9 months out of the year. Every time I go to London in November, they apologize for the 40-degree weather, and I'm so thankful for the 40-degree weather. I want to hold something that looks this cold and refreshing, right? So I'm holding and I can feel the ice in this glass. I can smell the mint. I can smell the lemon. I can taste what is ever is actually in this drink. It's beautiful for me to look at. I can hear the sound of the ice cubes plopping down in this drink. So I can use all 5 senses just looking at this one drink. And so research shows us that up to 80% of human memory is tied to olfaction, smell, touch, right? So by layering in just one additional modality, one additional sense, scented room, a short audio cue, you can tap into multiple brain circuits, and that boosts both the resonance and the durability of the memory. Now, I will be careful, I will say here, be careful, right? You have people that are very sensitive to sounds, smells, even taste, right? So you want to be sensitive to that. I have gone to events where, maybe they had a scent in the room and it was a little overwhelming. My best example of this is every fall, we're coming up on it. Think of the craft store or the grocery store, and you get 50 feet from the front door to go in, and you can already smell the cinnamon pine cones that they have at the door, right? And you have to kind of hold your breath to get in the door to get into the store. It's horrible. Or, think of how many events that we have been to that is a networking event, and we go in and the music is so loud, you can actually feel it almost like beating inside of your body, right? And so it's not networking, we can't hear it. And so there are people that are super sensitive to that. If I walk into a place and there's a loud, loud, loud noise, I can only handle it for so long and I'm out. So just be aware when you're adding in these, extra senses. Just be aware that you're not also overdoing it, right? We don't want to overwhelm our attendees. So here's some ideas for you. If you're hosting a gala dinner, diffuse a signature event fragrance during the welcome toast, right? And you can pair that with a matching ambient piano piece. I was just at a gala dinner a couple of weeks ago, and they had a signature scent in the room, and it was just a hint. It was beautiful. Workshops. Move part of your session outdoors. We did this about a year ago. I was an attendee, and we hit that 2 o'clock post afternoon or a post lunch slump. You could just see it in the room. You could feel it in the room. We were in Seattle, and it was a beautiful day. And the facilitator had the sense to move us all outside, out onto the deck, in the sun, and we put giant stickies up on the windows and did all of our brain dumping outside, where we were up and moving and also outside in a different location. So that's a great way to do it as well. Health and well-being session, do a 60-second breathing exercise and maybe have a very light lavender mist spritz and a soft chime to anchor that calm and focus, especially if that chime is in key with the breathing exercises. So just some ideas on how to design for those elements. All right, so let's move now to psychological safety, and why it is so important. So I know that my introverts, usually when I'm speaking in person, I'm like, introverts, raise your hand. And then I say, well, obviously you're not the introverts, right? Because you all raised your hand. I am an extroverted introvert. What that means in my world is I can fake it, but I am dying the whole time. It is really hard for me to walk into a room, and I'm so thankful when somebody will actually greet me at the door, say hello, give me a hug, and walk me in and introduce people to me. It makes it so much more safe for me. It's really hard for me to do it. So for my fellow extroverted introverts, I'm there with you. And, if you see me at an event, come find me and we'll walk into the room together. But in any environment that's perceived as unsafe, right? Your brain kind of develops these defense systems, and your walls go up to kind of block the danger instead of absorbing new ideas. So we need to find a place where people feel safe and where risk taking and where creative problem solving can flourish. Because what happens is fear stalls learning, right? Those defense systems go up. I have no idea what else is being said in the room. I might kind of sort of know, but I'm not really, like, I'm more concerned with right here than what's going on up here. So fear definitely stalls learning, whereas on the other side, safety unlocks exploration, right? We get much more creative when we feel safe. So how can we create this safety? Well, there's some different ways. We can tell people, there's no wrong answers, but actually mean it, right? There's no wrong answers. Tell them that up front, signaling that all contributions are welcome. We can use anonymous input tools, polls, digital boards, so people can share ideas without spotlight anxiety. Some of the best ideas come from the people that are most afraid to share them. And if they don't share, we miss out on that opportunity, right? So let's find a way to give them that ability to do it anonymously. It's one of the things I actually love at some of these events where you have either you can ask a question live with the mic, right? Or you can type it in to one of the systems and it shows up on the board next to the stage. So people who are afraid of asking questions, their question still goes up on the screen. It doesn't say whose it is, but it keeps gives them the ability to ask those questions without having to get on the microphone, because for some people, that's just too overwhelming. And then model vulnerability as the host or the speaker. Share your own, learn from failure story, right? I know I have plenty of them that show mistakes as part of the process. So there's different ways that we can make people safe. So again, here's some ideas. If you're doing a facilitated workshop, start with an anonymous digital whiteboard where everyone can post one wild idea, right, that they have, no names attached. And then approach those ideas positively, right? Never ever look at them and be like, oh, that's a bad idea or that's dumb. We want everybody to feel welcome and safe. Team retreats, co-create a safety charter for your team on a large poster paper where every participant can write a rule that they value. And then if you're doing a gaming event, a charity event, introduce a station where players deliberately try silly challenges like one-handed controllers, right? To win prizes while celebrating mistakes. So just a few ideas for you for designing for psychological safety. Now, related to psychological safety, and I know I'm going through these quickly, but also I will have things that you can work through at the end to kind of work through all of these different concepts. So no worries there. But related to psychological safety is trust, right? Social and emotional bonds. And so we want to use connection to foster our attendees' trust. So when we're talking about the brain's social circuits, we bond by something called mirroring, which is really sharing emotions and experiencing. So what happens is we have mirror neurons, so mirror like reflection, right? Mirror neurons in our brains that fire both when we perform an action, but also when we see someone else doing it. So what does that mean? Well, simply watching someone else smile or laugh or work through a task, our brain activates the same areas as if we were doing it ourselves. So if I walk into a room and Cecilia looks up and smiles at me, I am much more likely to instantly smile back at her. And those mirror neurons are firing, right? Where we have this shared emotion, this shared experience, right? So these systems let us pick up on others' emotions, others' intentions almost automatically. And that those shared experiences also trigger a burst of oxytocin. So, the so-called trust hormone, right? So it kind of cements that feeling of connection and makes a group feel more cohesive. So yes, Dave, that is why storytelling works in an event context, right? If we can tell a story where we trigger emotions, or if we can tell a story that somehow triggers a personal relevance, right? Something that I can relate to, that trust instantly, right? Pretty automatically happens. And so anytime that we can see others in action, we're kind of mentally stepping into their perspective, and sharing a positive moment literally wires our brains for trust and teamwork. So we really want to work on creating this trust. Again, anytime I can mirror what's happening in the room, I'm going to feel better walking in that room. So just think even from, not even from an event standpoint. If I walk into a room and people are happy and chatty and laughing, versus if I walk in a room and they're all just sitting here like this, right? Waiting for something to happen. Which reaction am I going to have, right? You're going to mirror what's happening around you. So why these bonds matter? Well, shared emotion drives engagement and lasting collaboration, right? So science shows us that group synchronization, it's early here still, it's okay, really aligns brain rhythms and it boosts motivation. So we really want to feel part of that collective experience, and we want to have those shared emotions. So here's some more design tips for you. If you're hosting an executive roundtable, for example, begin with a show and tell of an object that represents why each leader is attending. It really helps to foster empathy. Um, if any of you are fans of Ted Lasso, I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan. You can put that in the chat too. I'm curious to see. I am a total Ted Lasso freak. There was one episode where they were all sharing and giving up something that was important to them, and they were telling why it was important, and they were putting in this garbage bin that they were going to put on set on fire. Very long story around it. I won't let anything else go. But it was a way for them to all relate, right? And it was a shared experience, and it helped to build the team. I have a lot of Ted Lasso fans in here. That's awesome. Yeah, I have binge watched it like 15 times. I can tell you every episode and probably every word. Networking receptions. People have issues sometimes with the color-coded lanyards. I do when it's like blue is a supplier and pink is a planner, right? Because it then makes everybody avoid the suppliers. But if you can do something with color-coded lanyards where you're matching attendee interest to spark instant connections, right? We know we have AI matchmaking, but if you can do something super simple with a lanyard, I know that everybody who's got purple is my tribe for some reason, right? Whatever that topic is. And then user group meetings, host a live collaborative canvas, right? Where each attendee paints part of a shared mural. We've done this on our exhibit floor. I don't know when the next season is coming, but hopefully really, really soon for Ted Lasso. They're filming it. They're filming it. We all need to take like a little field trip to Kansas City so we can all watch it together while they're filming it, okay? We'll be all in for that. All right, so let's move on to managing cognitive load. So this is very much related to attention and memory, but we need to use chunking, right, to preserve your attendees' energy. And why does load matter? Because we don't want to feel like this little girl. So the best thing that I can tell you is always remember the 7 plus or minus 2 rule. And what the 7 plus or minus 2 rule tells us is that our brain can hold about 5 to 9 chunks of information at a time. And when you go beyond that without any kind of relief, those neurons fatigue and performance drops. But if you can chunk the content, right, into different bits or schedule brief breaks, you give your working memory circuits time to reset and to refocus. So a couple of things that we can do with that. So one, you'll probably notice on my slides, I have very few words on my slides. It's very intentional. My slides are always at least half image, if not more, for two reasons. One, I actually use these images as a cue for me as to what I'm going to talk about. People always ask me, do you have your entire script written out? No, I don't. I just look at the photo and I'm like, oh, okay, so for this slide, I'm going to talk about this. And I might have a couple of key scientific terms in my notes, but that's it. But I also use these as because I want you to be able to connect to them and retrieve and form memories, right? But I also want to be able to chunk the content. I don't want a lot of words on these slides. I want one or two things that are going to stick and resonate with you. So never ever put more than 3 bullet points on your slide. Anything else is way too much. I try not to put more than about 7 words on a slide on a single sentence. Another thing that you can do is if you are showing slides, you can do color-coded segments. So you can assign a distinct color bar or a background graphic to each major section of information, right? Content that relates to itself or to each other. So visually grouping this related content helps the brain kind of fit those ideas as one chunk. It's almost like filing it in filing folders, right? And putting it in the big drawer rather than a flood of unrelated points. And then we want to have kind of these recurring checkpoint breaks. So every 10 minutes or so, pause for a 1 or 2 minute checkpoint, right? Give the brain time to reset, give it time to relax, give it time to really react to the content that you're sharing. And, prompt participants to talk about and to share what they've learned so far, right? So we want to chunk that content. So here's some examples. If you're hosting a town hall, break the presentation into 8-minute segments, and then maybe follow it with a 2-minute stand and stretch. Okay. Product demo, roadshows. I love roadshows, they're fun. After 2 demo stations, maybe pause for a 1-question group reflection, right? What surprised you the most? There's a typo on my slide. Now I have to fix it before moving on. And then if you're hosting a leadership hackathon, I love hackathons, by the way. Hackathons are not only for software. I hope you all know that. Hackathons are great. If you're doing a leadership hackathon, schedule 3 45-minute sprints, each capped with a 5-minute desk off break where teams share one quick insight, right? You can bring in snacks, you can do all kinds of different things, but just break the information and the segment of time up into groups and into chunks so that people can reset, react, and reflect on what's going on. All right, I'm watching my time. I'm going to try to speed through technology a little bit. We have a lot of technology that we can use to enhance our attendees' experience. And every day, I swear, it just keeps getting more and more. So this will be the one slide that you see more than 3 bullet points on. But we have polling, we have live Q&A, we have event apps, we have AI matchmaking, right? We have live translation, we have closed captioning. We have more that's going to be coming, and you're going to see even more bullet points, chatbots, social walls, gamification, live feeds. There's more and more coming that we can use every day. What I will tell you is do not use tech just to use tech. Use tech because you actually need to use the tech. Okay. And a lot of this is also going to depend on who your audience is and whether this is appropriate for them. If I'm if I have an audience that is everybody my mom's age who is almost 85, I'm lucky if she can answer her phone some days, right? So incorporating some of these are not going to work for her, right? Social walls, she's not even on social media. If I'm looking at my younger millennial and younger generations, then yeah, bringing these in and bringing in multiples of these makes sense. Those of us at my age, a little bit here and there might be great, but look at your audience and look at who or why you're using it, right? Don't use gamification just to use gamification, right? Live translation and closed captioning, huge advocate. Please use those if at all possible. But look at these different things that you can bring in for tech. Some fun things to bring in, sentiment analysis, right? There's ethical facial AI out there now that can gauge emotional reactions. They can even tell me as a speaker where I had everybody's interest, and then I either said something stupid or dumb or uninteresting, and all of their attention dipped. And then I said something really funny, and I said Ted Lasso, and all of a sudden the interest came right back up, right? So we can use these different AI tools for gauging emotional reactions. And what that allows me to do then is to perform those A/B split tests to examine the effectiveness of what I'm saying or different activations or content to see what works and why. So this is fun. Just make sure that you are using ethical AI. It's not capturing people's information and recording their personal information. This is a fun one. Projection mapping. The technology is amazing now. You might have seen the NBA floor last year that had all the projection mapping on it during the game. It was amazing. But you can turn any space into a canvas for storytelling. So this particular picture, that is a plain, pretty much plywood piece of, I was about to say furniture, we'll say building in the background, and they projection mapped all of that on there. And even some other ones where they projection map down onto the floor and the tables are lit up, right? We can do storytelling through projection mapping. So using surfaces like walls and floors and objects to create those dynamic visuals. Obviously, there is a cost to this, so you have to decide, is it worth it? But on some of your events, it might be. It might be what you need to have that kind of immersive experience for people. We have AR and VR, right? Really great for product launches, showing people 3D models that, attendees can explore. Virtual tours. We saw a lot of these during the pandemic, right? The Van Gogh experience was a great version of that. But letting attendees walk through an upcoming event destination or venue. Anybody that has a venue or a destination, these are great, right? Because you don't even necessarily need to bring people physically. You can give them a preview by walking them through the space, right? Um, and just from a interactive storytelling, allowing attendees to explore brand's history, and then just inclusivity. Again, just be careful. Some people, I can only do AR and VR for a couple of minutes, and then I have to stop. It actually messes with my equilibrium. But also consider, anybody who does have sensitivities, but also give them lots of directions because not everybody knows how to use it. And then AI, right? This is an entire conversation. I'm going to go through this really fast, but use your prompts for design. Ask the questions, not only what's cool and should I have it, right? Or how can I market it? But, anything even from a, dietary standpoint, right? I have somebody who is coming, or I have attendees who are coming who have diets that are vegan, and who are, maybe, no shellfish. And then I have, this religious diet. Please review my menu and tell me if there's anything in here that would be inappropriate for any of these specific diets, right? So use AI, use those prompts for design to be more engaging. So I'm going to give you 3 brain-friendly action plans to keep moving on with. And hopefully you'll put at least one of these action plans into play. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to insert just one pattern interrupt in your next agenda. So it could be an actual break in the agenda, and coffee breaks don't count as breaks, by the way. Where the people have time to relax and reflect. It could be a pattern interrupt, in a session where maybe you introduce something surprising. It could be a pattern interrupt in your booth in the floor, right? Just insert one pattern interrupt into your next agenda. I want you to also pair a key idea with a retrieval cue. So this is going back to memory formation and memory retention and being able to retrieve. So figure out something that you can do to help form that memory, and then also give somebody a retrieval cue. And then lastly, co-create a psychological safety rule with your team. And this could be a rule that your team is going to implement for your team, or it could be a rule that your team is going to implement for your event. You can go either way with that, but co-create a psychological safety rule with your team. Why do I want you to do all of these things? Because your brain deserves better events. And honestly, so do your attendees. So I want to say thank you. You can scan this QR code. It will give you access to the slides if you want them. There's also a workbook that you can download, and that will allow you to start working through each of these different areas with you. It could just be you or with your team to start implementing them into your different meetings and events. But please feel free to access that workbook and download it. So with that said, I'm going to leave this up. If there's any questions, I see one coming through, but if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. And I think we have a few minutes for questions. So let's see. Do I have an example of safety for a team? I don't have a document, although I'm willing to sit down with you and have a conversation to talk through some examples. But the first example, like I gave in the presentation, is really, there are no bad answers, right? That's definitely one of them. And I love the idea of everybody can kind of come to this knowing that we all have different viewpoints, and that's okay, especially in this world that we live in right now. And I think that's a really important one. It is perfectly fine for us to disagree. And I think that's a really, really important one. It is perfectly fine for us to disagree. It is perfectly fine for us to have different opinions. I can still respect you and I can still treat you with respect, regardless of whether we have the same opinion or not. So I think, especially in this world we have right now, I think that's going to be a really, really important one. If you have any other questions, feel free to put those in the chat. Also, I'm going to tell you, please feel free to reach out to me. You are always welcome to reach out to me. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. If you download the workbook there, put a note in there's an extra bonus question on there. Just answer it however you want, but you can actually just put something in there that you need me to reach out to you as well. And I'm looking, I don't see, yes, sharing slides. You can do that off of this QR code. Anything else that are, just want to see? Yeah, perfect. You're all welcome. I appreciate the fact that you all coming and taking time out of your day and letting me share all of this with you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
Fantastic. Thank you so
There we
much,
go.
Lisa. We appreciate you just sharing all of that knowledge with us. Thank you guys again for joining our session today. It was phenomenal information that we got here. I took a lot of notes, so thank you so much for that.
Thank you, everybody. I hope to see you soon.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.